Brock was anything but Purdy. Sunday night drama and a shocking thread shared by winners across the league. We've got all that and more because it's time for Sunday Night Blitz. All right, welcome to Sunday Night Blitz. He's Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports NFL and betting analyst extraordinaire. I'm Jason Fitz. We hang out with you every Sunday, and we tape this immediately after the game. So, Frank, I am still shooketh because I am a believer. Typically, we're going to get to every single game. But as I sit here right now, the number of times I've had to look at somebody and say, one play doesn't win or lose a football game. I think tonight might be the exception because one play from the 1 yard line at the end of the first half where Tyrod Taylor chose to audible to a run, they couldn't get a playoff, changed the entire dynamic of the ending of what we just watched. The Giants lose in dramatic fashion. The Bills win in dramatic fashion. And if you are a Giants fan right now, you are losing your mind.
Yeah, except if like you're trying to talk yourself into Caleb Williams or something. Yes, I mean, that's the thing. When we talk about clock management stuff, there's usually some gray area of like, it's 90-10, right? Like, oh, you could have called a timeout there. He should have. But it's like, there's this justification. What the Giants did at the end of the first half was 100-0. Like, it's so bad of a mistake. Everybody knew it. Tyrod Taylor, who's had really a heck of a career, but he's a veteran. Like, he's not a rookie out there. And I don't even know if a rookie makes that mistake. Like, you just got to know better. You have 3 shots, basically, 14 seconds left if you pass the ball. And at least you're going to get a field goal out of it. They got nothing because they ran the ball up the middle with Saquon Barkley, who gets stuffed. And, man, did that come back to haunt them late. I mean, you thought the game was over, right? When Taylor throws deep to Slate and it gets broken up. You're like, 1:45 to go. This game's done. I'm getting ready to post my game or whatever. And all of a sudden you're like, wait a second. Like, the Bills didn't move the ball. Oh, they just missed a field goal. But still you're like, Giants ain't moving the ball. They haven't moved the ball weeks, whatever. And then Tyrod just takes them all the way down the field. You get the one play from the 1 yard line. What did you think of the play call? Do you absolutely pass there to Waller? Do you try to sneak it? Do you try to run it? What are you doing there? I thought it was okay. Just Tyrod Johnson made a really, really nice play at Waller to break it up.
It was, but I also think when you do have a quarterback that's mobile, you can extend plays and give yourselves more options. Like, I thought they might do some sort of a bootleg and find some sort of interesting way to try and at least get him outside, give a couple of ways to make a play. That whole last drive just felt like organized chaos is the best way to describe it. Like, I didn't know. I was shocked that Buffalo was giving up so much cushion because you were basically going to make it easier and easier and easier. And then to get the pass interference call that I think was the right call, but also I would have had a hard time if they didn't call that. To get set up at that 1 yard line again, I think was pretty stunning. I want to go back the end of the first half too, because I'm reading Twitter like everybody else. I refuse to call it X. And Jeff Schwartz was out there. He made a really good point on Twitter. Jeff joined me a few weeks ago on one of the shows too. But he made a really good point at the time with that play. So why was there ever an option? And he pointed out through responding to people, and I think it's important to stress, like, in certain play calls, the coaches tell you clearly there is no out on this. Like, you don't have a secondary option. And so Schwartz was saying, like, what the hell were they doing even giving him the option of checking to a run? Like, unless he went completely rogue and from the hand signals, it doesn't look like it's like he was given that option. Why would you even give him that card to play in that situation? I think that's a player fail. It's an execution fail, but it's also a coaching fail to me.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. And right now, I mean, we're taping this as Brian Daboll speaking to the media. So I'm interested to see if he just dodges the question. You kind of assume he might and just be like, well, some non-answer. Put it all on me. Whatever he's going to say. I don't think he's going to throw his quarterback under the bus or anything. But I'd be very interested to know the mechanics of how that went down. You're right. Like, why is there even an option there? Like, I think it was Collinsworth, was like, if they had a timeout left, one of the offensive linemen probably would have got up out of his stance, called timeout. Like, what are we even doing here? What's going on? Like, it was just a fiasco, an absolute fiasco. And kind of when it happened, you're like, this is going to come back to bite them, isn't it? You just kind of knew it was. I didn't expect the Giants to give them a game. Nobody did. There was 15.5-point underdogs. But by the end of the first half, you knew, like, the Bills are in a dogfight here. Like, they're not good. The Giants aren't going anywhere. And when they screwed up, not even getting 3 points out of that situation, you just kind of knew that we're going to be talking about this at the end of the game.
But the Bills, like, let's be honest for a second. Let's look at the other side of this. Like, the Bills are the reason I have trust issues, dude. Because, like, I sat here with you and I'm like, I don't know. Like, then you tout up the Bills. Like, 1 week I feel like you can believe in the Bills. The next week they do what they did in London. And I excuse that. I went in, I found a reason to be like, hey, you know what? Time change, hard. Jacksonville's already there. You excuse it. Well, What's the excuse for that lame effort? Like, that just, it was so wildly out of sync. Even the throw that gave the Giants life at the end, like Josh Allen had Dawson Knox. He had the play he was looking for and just can't deliver the football. Like, what the hell's wrong with Buffalo?
And then Tyler Bass misses a field goal. It was a terrible game. Even Josh Allen at the end was like, I don't know. That was terrible. Let's just go home. Whatever he said to NBC at the end. It was like, because everybody knows, like, you are expected to beat the Giants. If you are a Super Bowl contender, you are expected to not just beat the Giants, but destroy them. Like, this should have been done by halftime. One of those is 28 zip. We're talking about firing up the podcast early, like all that kind of stuff. No, this was a miserable performance for them. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if this is a London hangover. I don't know if they obviously took the Giants too lightly. I don't think that's even in question. But yes, like you said, trust issues. It's hard to be like the Bills are a Super Bowl contender because you're going to tell me right back, you're going to say, what happened in the Jaguars game? What happened in the Giants game? This felt like a loss. It felt like a loss for the Bills. Like, you look so bad and you have to fade a one play, untimed play from the 1 yard line just to beat the Giants with their laundry list of an injury report and not even a quarter. Like, there's no reason the Bills to be in this game, and yet they were, and they almost lost it. They were really, really lucky they didn't lose it.
Like, isn't this the theme of today? Because as we go through every game, and if you're new to the show, we go through every game every Sunday. As I was watching it today, what I was trying to figure out all day, like, what happened to the good teams? Because all of the good teams came up flat. And what happened to the bad teams? Because several teams that we just week in and week out presume are going to be bad are still fighting. Like, mediocrity is alive in the modern NFL season because there's a bunch of teams that are working their off to get to some level of mediocrity that I keep thinking are going to lay down. So, like, I'm not seeing the lay down from most teams most weeks, and I'm not seeing the dominant effort from the good teams that I expect the good teams to have most weeks.
Yeah, it's the NFL, man. It's not college. You don't get the Citadel on your schedule ever. Like, you can't schedule someone for homecoming. Like, the Giants had been absolutely positively uncompetitive for 5 games. Terrible. They were a terrible, terrible football team, and everyone's like, Caleb Williams. And then nobody tanks in the NFL. That's not a thing. It might, late in the season, there might be some fishy coaching decisions or something, but it's not a thing. And you see that everywhere in the league, and especially with the quote unquote terrible teams. Yeah, a lot of them rose up today that I did not expect.
All right, so let's start looking at some of the other games, including one game that did not have 2 terrible teams. We knew this was going to be an epic matchup from the outset. San Francisco headed to Cleveland to take on the Browns. The Browns get the stunning win. It was the biggest win for the Browns in their organization as an underdog, like the biggest point spread underdog that they've been in a win since 2010. So since 2010, like the biggest upset for them as an organization. They win 19-17. And look, this game is going to, like, I'm just telling you now, every single show that everybody watches on ESPN and Fox for the next 3 days are going to spend all of their time absolutely poo-pooing all over Brock Purdy, because all of this conversation about Brock Purdy and is it the weapons? He loses Debo in this game. They lose Christian McCaffrey in this game. And then all of a sudden, Brock doesn't look great. And now that's going to be, my phone was blowing up with people like, see, that's why you can't trust Brock Purdy, because he was pedestrian in this game.
He was not good. All kudos to the Browns defense, man. They're a good team. As they get Deshaun Watson actually healthy. Hey, Deshaun, you already got the bag. Come on and play, dude. Like, I don't know. I'm sure there's dudes in that locker room who are like, yeah, I'm injured too, man. I'm playing, right? I'm not making $230 million guaranteed. But that's a story for another day, I guess. Purdy in this game, yes, very, very average, but when he had to come up with a drive, he did. They got right in field goal position. We're not even having this type of conversation if Jake Moody makes a kick. Guys, don't draft kickers in the top 100. It just doesn't work out. Like, it just doesn't. Like, when they made that pick, it's like, what are the Niners doing in today? Like, I swear, as soon as they brought in a field goal team, I'm like, this guy's going to miss, isn't he? Like, it just felt that. You just felt like there's something. The Browns never catch that break, but they did today. It's funny because all week, you talked about, you talked about 49ers are the best team of football. Is anybody going to beat them? Or are they going to go into Philly in December undefeated and all that? But that, again, we're just reminded that's not how the NFL works. I guess let's wait to ask this question until the next game. But I think that we have to reassess, are the 49ers the best team of football? I'll ask you who I think the best team of football is a little bit later. But right now, coming off this loss, you're like, how did that team lose to PJ Walker? Like, what? Like, I fully expected, like, the Browns to have negative points in this game. It was going to be like 31 to -6. Their offense was going to be so bad. and they just didn't do it, man. It's very disappointing for them to come out of this with a loss.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about XFL star PJ Walker coming out and doing his thing. And I do want to get to the Deshaun part of this because the Browns at this point, they get a huge win. And the Browns defense now tonight is getting all of the publicity in the world. Like everybody wants to just turn around. The Browns have the best defense in the NFL. Like I'm not going to let one game suddenly change my mind. But they do have, let's say this, one of the best defenses. And they've shown that they have a dominant defense that can beat anybody. And they have capable players on the offensive side of the ball. All they need is sufficient quarterback play. And they could be really spectacular. So I am looking at the Browns right now thinking as much money as they spent, everything else. This game is going to become maddeningly frustrating for Browns fans as the season goes on. If A, Deshaun doesn't find himself healthy enough to play, and B, plays and continues to not play as well as he needs to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a huge part of this, and we'll see. But this was, I mean, just in terms of where your season's going, this seemed like they're going to just get rolled in this game by the 49ers. This good start they had's all to waste, whatever. And then they come up with a win that's going to just be incredible for them as the season goes on. This is the kind of win that puts you in the playoffs, where you look back and you say, how did the Browns make the playoffs? Oh, yeah, that game back in October. PJ Walker actually made some plays in the defense, put the clamps down on the 49ers and missed a field goal. This is an enormous win for the Browns. As big of a regular season win as they've had, like literally. Like I know you talked about the point spread just as being that, but I mean, you just think about the Browns' history. How many more bigger wins have they had than this? Beating the almost unquestioned best team in football with your backup quarterback, the third starting quarterback you've used this year to kind of push you forward and not take a step back from this good start you've had this season. Absolutely enormous for Cleveland.
I know as we go through the games, we'll say this a lot, but I'm a big fan at this point, especially this year, of the eye test. It's not always whether or not you win or lose games. It's, does your team look like they're any good, your favorite team? I would say that in this game between the Giants and the Bills, I didn't walk away from it saying, oh, man, the Giants are suddenly spectacular. And I did walk away from it saying, God, I got some questions for the Bills. When you talk about the Cleveland Browns and San Francisco 49ers game today, I walked away from it saying, okay, if San Francisco has some health issues, that's going to be a problem. That's not a hot take. But conversely, I looked at this Cleveland team and thought, man, you bottle that up, like that passes everything you could possibly want out of a team. Like the Browns put something on tape today that is going to resonate for the rest of the year as the argument for why they are a very good team in the AFC.
Absolutely. I mean, there's 5 difference-making defenses in the NFL, 6 maybe, and Cleveland definitely has one of them. Whether we want to argue whether they're number 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, it doesn't even matter. They're one of those defenses that could win you a game. Jim Schwartz, what a hire as defensive coordinator. Absolutely positively, it just turned the franchise around almost. Their defense wasn't even good last year, and now it's one of the 3 or 4 best in football.
Speaking of good defenses, we got great defense from the Jets, and the Jets also do the unthinkable. They pull off the massive upset, beating the Eagles 20-14. I'm stunned. And I'm not stunned necessarily because the Jets defense came to play. We know that the Jets defense, no matter how many injuries they have, like, let's acknowledge that every single game we've talked about so far, we could have spent the entire time talking about who is missing for injuries. So I don't want to make any excuses for either side of this matchup. Both sides had a bunch of injuries. I keep looking at the Eagles saying, man, this sort of matched the concern we've had every week where they've been winning, but it hasn't looked great. This time they weren't able to get past the fact that they were just outmanned. The Jets defense brought it to the Eagles.
Yeah, and the Jets played without their top 2 quarterbacks. Like, I was like, it's kind of a sneaky upset alert. Like, maybe the Eagles haven't been playing great. Maybe the Jets. And then Sauce Gardner goes down. You're like, they ain't got Sauce Gardner. They ain't got DJ Reed. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith going to eat these guys up. And it didn't happen. Look, Jalen Hurts is a great quarterback. I'm not trying to take away anything from him, but this was a terrible game for him. He throws 3 interceptions, and the third one, look, you're at the end of the game, and you've watched the Jets offense for 3 hours. You fully know there is no way the Jets are putting together a touchdown drive. The only thing that's losing you that game right then is a turnover, and Jalen Hurts just throws a miserable interception that's returned all the way inside the 10-yard line. Eagles probably let him score after that, couldn't get it done after it to get a drive together to answer the Jets score. I just thought this was a terrible, terrible game by Jalen Hurts. But the Jets defense has made Josh Allen look terrible. They made Patrick Mahomes look not great. Let's put it that way. They made Jalen Hurts look terrible. This Jets defense is really, really, really good. And you just start to wonder, like, can this defense carry this team into the playoffs? Like, I hate to do this, but just imagine this team with a healthy Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, are they 5-1 right now? We're probably, when we have this discussion, we're going to have in a second about the best team in football. If Aaron Rodgers was still on this team, Jets would be one of the teams we're listing. And it's kind of a kudos to their defense that they're winning them games. They won this game for them today. No question about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are certain things that we now know are just part of the identity of this team, right? Like, we know at this point that Breece Hall can run the ball. It's just a matter of they're going to give him the opportunities. We know that the Jets in general can run the ball. I want to give the Jets credit for putting up 20 points on an Eagles defense that's been getting its fair share of credit. Like, I can't figure out today across the league if it was just that every offense overslept or suddenly every defense just woke up and was like, yep, we got it. But it felt like a day where points were at a premium. So I'll give the Jets offense credit. And Zach Wilson played well enough to win. Like, there's just no two ways about it. He played well enough to win. It is stunning to see Jalen Hurts turn the ball over that way. That's just never been part of who he is. And some of the throws were just bad. Like, it wasn't even
it's just, we talked about, like, even a rookie quarterback can't make that mistake. Even a rookie quarterback can't throw that interception he threw at the end. It was just that's the only way you lose that game is to throw that ball. And throw it into the 15th row and you're fine. Just punt the ball away. Who cares? This was a game that they knew was going to be low scoring. Yes, it's tough to run on the Jets. I get that, but it's tough to pass on them too. Their game plan was really suspect in this game. It just was way too heavy with Hurts throwing the ball. I didn't like that at all. And it came back to bite them. And you just gave them too many opportunities to make a play. And then they finally did. Like, they were the last undefeated team. We're sitting here week 6 and there's not any more undefeated teams. There's obviously, I don't know if there's a great team in the NFL this year, but who's the best team? Like, we just talked about 3 teams between the Bills, the 49ers, and the Eagles, who you could have made an argument for any one of the 3 being the best team, probably the 49ers, but whatever. Who's the best team of football right now after what we saw on Sunday? Is it one of those teams that just had a terrible outing? Is it the Dolphins or somebody? Who do you got as the best team in football right now?
I mean, I'm back to the Dolphins, right? Like, I was too high on the Dolphins a couple of weeks ago, but man, I'll show my Madden bias here. Like, I trust offense at some point. Like, I trust a quarterback that I know can throw the football to wide receivers that I know that can get open. And when you've got enough of an offensive line to do it, plus I think Miami this year has shown an incredible commitment that they didn't show the last couple of years to running the football, right? And so Mostert's run the ball really well, even without Achane in the ball in the game, right? Like, I'm looking at, they've got the playmakers on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think that they're in the same category defensively as Philadelphia or San Francisco, either one. I think that's very clear. But I think that their offense is far more explosive than either of those sides. So I still want to lean Miami. I just don't know what to do right now with San Francisco based solely on the fact that, you know, they've got a couple injuries, and now what's it mean for Brock Purdy? And now we get a different prove-it point. So I hate to be overreactionary, but I go Miami. Where are you on this?
I'm still with San Francisco. Look, all these teams have lost. And my one problem with Miami is they've really, truly been tested once, and they lost by 28 points at Buffalo. I know this isn't the NCAA tournament selection committee, but you got to have some quality wins on your resume at some point, and they don't. Look, they're fun. They're great. I know they have the capability of beating good teams, but I need to see it first. Whereas, look, San Francisco looked terrible today. They didn't. Again, you can't lose to a PJ Walker team. Like, you just don't do that, even if you're on the road. So a bad loss for them, but who hasn't had a bad loss already? Again, we're October 15th, and there's no undefeated teams left. So I'm just going to go with the one I think has shown the highest ceiling so far, the one that's been the most consistent, even with the loss today. That's the 49ers to me. I still think they're the best team in football, but as we saw today, everybody's got warts, man. Everybody's beatable. There's no team. We thought for a minute, like, maybe this is the 2007 Patriots, right? Like, the 49ers, could they run it? No, there's no great team in the NFL this year. No unbeatable team.
You've inspired me. I think this year, this is going to be my new method, figuring out who's great. I'm going to take the Olympic method. Like, remember when there was so much controversy in, like, figure skating with the Olympics back in the 90s where, like, I don't know, maybe they still do this, but, like, they made every judge would have to throw, whenever they get the scores, the lowest score would get thrown out and the highest score would get thrown out. They would throw those two out. So, like, maybe what I do is I take the worst game out and the best game out. You just throw those out and be like, hey, I'm taking your best win. I'm chucking it away. I'm taking your worst loss. I'm chucking it away. Now we're going to see what's left. and see if maybe that'll help me figure out who's in. I don't know. But when half the league is 3 and 3,
that's actually really good. I might adopt that. Actually, I stumbled upon something I'm going to steal from you, dude.
Look at that. That's like you're going to write it and make it sound super smart. I just am going to make it sound stupid. But that might be the only way we can figure it out,
right?
That being said, though, let's be honest. Like most of the league's 3 and 3 right now. Like how the hell do we even know what a good win is anymore?
No, it's actually a great point. If I'm sitting here waiting for the Dolphins to be like, yeah, they need to beat a good team. Well, how many good teams are on their schedule? Because there's really no good teams in the NFL, right? Like there's a handful of teams who I'm like, yeah, they're pretty good. They could win a Super Bowl if everything breaks right. But I mean, as far as great teams go, I think we saw today. Look, I still think the 49ers could get there as a great team. Still think the Eagles could get there as a great team. I'm a little shooketh on the Bills, to be honest, to use your term. But yeah, if you're waiting around to, who have you beat? Who have you played? Well, you're going to play probably a mediocre team because 3/4 of the league is mediocre.
Yeah, that's we'll get to a bunch of that mediocrity in a second. There are very few teams that I have some confidence in, but my confidence did grow today for one other result that we got to focus on. My confidence grew in the Baltimore Ravens today. And it grew because, I keep saying I want to see this click moment for the offense. And look, I think it's fair to say that Lamar has played statistically very well. As you know, and I've said pretty consistently, I feel like there's been some moments where I'm just like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's natural yet. Man, against Tennessee, it looked pretty damn natural. Lamar specifically, the Ravens specifically. It took the Titans a long time to wake up in this game. Final score, and it's 24-16. But I don't really know that it ever felt like it was that close. And significant here is the Titans lose Ryan Tannehill. He's carted off with an ankle injury. All of a sudden, Malik Willis comes in. And if the Titans are looking at a backup quarterback situation, this season is going to go off the rails real quick. That's a disaster for the organization.
Man, it is. First, the Ravens. If you're grading on a curve and every team has had their bad moments through 6 games. I just need to stress that over and over. Like, we're talking about like the best teams in the NFL have already had a terrible loss, so we're 6 weeks into this thing, right? Like, I mean, it's just topsy-turvy. But if you're grading on a curve and you're looking at the Ravens, it doesn't look so bad anymore. If you realize that, hey, everybody's had their terrible moments, the Ravens have had theirs too. But like you said, the offense seems to be getting a little bit better. They dominated this game. Their defense is pretty good when healthy. The Ravens are my sneaky Super Bowl contender. I think the Ravens have been pretty good this season. They're going to have some real fights ahead of them against the Browns and whatnot, but they already had the win in hand against the Browns. So I really like the Ravens. I like what they do. Again, grading on a curve where you're kind of like, they had this terrible game. Well, yeah, so what? Like everybody has. Like if that's your criteria, we're just eliminating 32 teams right now. So Ravens pretty good, but the Titans, this was troubling. I mean, this was really alarming. Even before Tannehill went out, he was terrible, and he's been bad all season. He has a negative interception touchdown ratio at this point. I don't know. Like I kind of wrote winners and losers in their blurb. Like, what do you do if you're the Titans? You start trading guys. Like, you're only 2-4. The rest of the league, as we talked about, is just kind of all sticking around 3-3. So you're not really out of it. But I think even Mike Vrabel talked about after the game, like there's some problems here we're just not fixing. And that kind of led me to believe that we might see some big trades coming from the Titans.
This is what Vrabel had to say after the game. And I think this is pretty stunning, y'all. Check out what Vrabel said at his press conference. Paul Kuharsky asking him about whether or not some of these things can be fixed.
Some things unable to be corrected given
Probably.
What you have?
Maybe. We'll see. But not going to stop trying. Not going to stop trying to prepare them and teach them and fundamentals and execution. There'll be some good plays in there, and there'll be certainly the ones in there that we have to eliminate that are getting us beat.
Man, if you ask me, like, that's stunning from a coach. And I know, Vrabel's sort of a guy that wears his heart on his sleeve a little bit with this stuff. Like, he doesn't mince words. But when you come in and say, yeah, some of this stuff might not be fixable, and you're only 6 games into the season, you're sending, all 3 Titans fans the message. Don't at me, Titans fans. You're sending them all a message of like, hey, we're going to suck this year.
At Jason Fitz on Twitter, because we're not calling it X. Yeah, not me. That wasn't me who said that, guys. That was Jason. So, yes, it sounded like a defeated guy. Like, the Vrabel sound beaten down. Like, he knows. He's got to know this team is not good. Like, I watch him, and I know this team's not good. He's got to know it, too. But they're one of these teams that's just competitive enough that you kind of like, do you tear it all down right now? Do you trade Derrick Henry? Do you trade some of these other veterans? I don't think there's any trade market for Ryan Tannehill anymore. They kind of floated that in March, didn't go anywhere. So I don't know. And even Jeffrey Simmons after the game, one of the true standouts for the Titans, he was like, there's maybe guys who don't want to be here. We got to figure out the guys who want to be here. Like, it just seemed like this wasn't a normal loss. This was just a disheartening, we just got our tails kicked. We're not a good football team loss. And I think from some of the quotes coming out of that game in London, you could tell this Titan team is really on the brink right now of their season just falling apart, even though we're only 6 games in.
So I'm going to give Titans fans a beacon of light in a dark world.
All three of
I think you
them.
need one right now.
Yeah, right.
Listen
up, all three. All three.
I will give. I'll give all three of you some hope here. I will say this: the Titans need to figure out what they have a quarterback, and I'm not particularly personally right now. I am not on the hype train and never have been for Will Levis. Coming out of college, I wasn't on that hype train. The best thing that happens here, even though I think it's early to put Levis in for the development they want as a passer, like, hey, you can start to figure it out because next year's quarterback class is far better than this year's quarterback class was. So if you are going to suck, and if that's your inevitability, at least put Will Levis in, even though that may cost you games, to figure out what you have. Because I don't care if he was a second-round pick or not. Next year, there are quarterbacks. If he had come out in next year's draft, and I asked a couple of gurus this coming in, where he would have ranked in next year's draft class, and the expectation would have been 6th or 7th. So I'm just saying that to say that there are better touted quarterback prospects out there. Maybe they love him, and maybe he proves everybody wrong. But why not now? If you're 2-4 and you have problems that aren't fixable, you're not competitive with the Jags, we'll say it that way. If you're not competitive with any of those, then at some point, you just got to turn around and say, let's figure out what we can do to become competitive, play Will Levis and see what you got.
Yeah, it is troubling to me that he can't get ahead of Malik Willis on the depth chart. I'm not trying to dog out Malik Willis here. I liked him coming out of college. He's shown some things in the preseason. He's got some exciting plays on tape, but when you watch him down to down, he's just not there. He's not close. I mean, he barely played in this game. He took 4 sacks. Like, what are you doing? Like, he's just, we've seen the Malik Willis show, and it's just, you already know this is not, he has so much developing to do that maybe he has the Geno Smith career path and at 30 years old he emerges or something, but he's nowhere close. So I agree with you. At some point, I don't know if it's this point. I don't know yet. It depends on Tannehill's health, if he's ready to go next week. But at some point, you just got to throw Will Levis into the fire and say, kid, over the next X amount of games, you got to show us whether you're our guy or not, because like you said, we're going to be in position to draft one of these dudes. Whether it might not be Caleb Williams, it might not be Drake May, but maybe it's Shedeur Sanders. Maybe it's Michael Penix. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, you need to figure it out by the end of the season. I think the Titans are already there in their season where they need to start having these conversations.
We'll move on now to the games from the slate. The only thing I'll say is this: let's revisit later this season the Mike Vrabel portion of this conversation, because I'm genuinely curious what the overall temperature is going to be on somebody that in Nashville is completely insulated, can sort of win or lose games, and there's very little heat that ever comes with that. Like, he sort of lives in darkness here. Like, nobody ever throws that light on him. And yet I hear his name constantly when it's like, well, maybe he ends up at Ohio State. Maybe he replaces Belichick. Like, the legend of Mike Vrabel and whether or not it's actually backed up by the production of Mike Vrabel is going to be interesting, especially if the Titans turn into the barrel of suck that this season could get into. All right, but we've got all season to figure out whether or not Vrabel's on the hot seat. Let's get to the rest of the Week 4 action, and we'll start with the game that nobody wanted to watch because I'm hosting and sitting in front of a microphone. I haven't told you this yet today, but I'd just like to let you know that my beloved Raiders are 3-3. I think it's important that we get that out quickly here, Frank. Like, my beloved Raiders are 3-3. They're sitting at 500 with the ugliest win. I think the ugliest game. There's nothing to say about this other than it was damn ugly between two meh football teams and somebody had to win.
Yeah, the Patriots aren't even meh. I can't even get there. They're so bad right now. They're in really, really bad shape. I mean, they flashed the stat, and I didn't think it was real. I thought it was like a typo or something, that the Patriots broke a streak of 27 straight possessions without even reaching the red zone. That's insane. That's so bad. You saw Mac Jones throw another bad interception. I was honestly surprised that at that point, Bill wasn't just like, Malik Cunningham, go in. I'm sick of watching this. I'm done. We need something else on offense. But he stuck with Mac. Even at the end, he did throw a really, really nice ball to Devontae Parker in the final minute, and Parker just drops it. It's like, and so now it should have been caught, and you're going to be at about midfield. And I don't know that they can get the 20 yards they needed to get a field goal shot, but at least you have a chance. Instead, Matt gets sacked in the end zone. By the way, thank you as a Raiders -3 better to Max Crosby. That was a great play. The story to me wasn't the Raiders. I'm sorry, Fitz, because the Raiders just beat a really, really, really bad football team. The story continues to be the Patriots and how down they are. They might be the worst team of football. I mean, they are just incapable of even, I don't even know what you do. Again, they kind of had this refusal to just yank Mac Jones and try anything else because they know Bailey Zappe's not it. I guess they didn't want to throw in Malik Cunningham today. And there are probably reasons for that. But at some point, Bill Belichick just has to say, I can't watch this anymore. Mac's terrible. We need to do something else just for the locker room to let everybody know this level of play is not going to be tolerated. That's how bad he is right now. And that's how bad the Patriots offense is.
I truly believe the Patriots have a real shot at the first overall pick in the draft. And the question is going to be, who's coaching him in the future? I will stand by that. The one quick thing I'll say on this, too, before we move on, is that you mentioned the name Max Crosby. I think every week we see him, he is playing himself into the Defensive Player of the Year conversation.
Yes,
I mean, what he's doing with absolutely no help on the defensive side of that ball, of the ball, is absolutely stunning. And to win the game, essentially, with the safety, when everybody knew that the one thing you had to do was stop him, he is an unblockable force, and it is a delight to watch. So while the Raiders may not be any good, at least when you're watching it, you're watching somebody coming into his prime that's turned into one of the best players at his position, one of the best players
easily
defensively in the entire NFL.
Real quick, Fitz, we are blessed. Like, if you think about how many dudes are playing at, I don't want to call them all Hall of Famers, but playing at that level, Max Crosby, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett. I'd even put Aiden Hutchinson in there. He's having a monster season. He just doesn't have the sack numbers yet. You can go on at Nick Bosa. I mean, we are blessed to be watching some of these dudes, and absolutely positively Max Crosby might be at the top of that heap, and it's a pretty impressive heap that he'd be on top of.
You mentioned Aiden Hutchinson. We'll use that as a perfect segue to get to the Lions, who, when you just mentioned who's actually good in the NFL, I will now throw myself under the bus. I will take my shoulder, I will throw myself under the bus and say, I'm a moron, because, I would usually ask Stone to go back and try and edit this to make me not sound stupid. But no, I will throw myself under the bus. In that conversation, how did I not say the Lions? The Lions have only done what they need to do in every single game. Now, Tampa Bay's jerseys were chef's kiss, 10 out of 10, no notes. But the Lions and their game plan was even better with the 20-6 win.
Yeah, it was an impressive win. Whatever you think about the Buccaneers, they're still a 3-1 football team, and Detroit, this was never really even a game. You knew, like, the Lions are winning this game. Their defense is so much improved. They shut down the Bucs, shut down Baker Mayfield, make all the jokes you want, but it still was an impressive performance. The biggest thing to come out of this game for Detroit, Jameson Williams made a huge play. This game, it was close because the Buccaneers were fighting hard, weren't really giving up much to the Lions offensively. And then Goff, out of 3rd and 10, hits Jameson Williams for a 45-yard touchdown. And I don't know Jameson Williams is ever going to get there as like a Deshaun Jackson type who has 1,200 yards or anything. But all he needs to do is make one play like that a game. If he can just loosen up the defense a little bit, more room for Amon-Ra, more room for Sam Laporta, more room for the running game. We'll see David Montgomery's injury situation. But I think Jameson Williams, in his development, just to be a guy who defenses have to be like, where's Jameson? We need to worry about him. We can't just play single high against him. You need to worry about that guy every play. It opens up the Lions offense. I thought today's big play from him was absolutely huge in that way. And by the way, real quick, on the Lions, why don't we mention them as a top team in football as a possibility there? It's because they're the Detroit Lions.
But are the Lions, are the Lions about to become America's darling?
Yes, I think so. I think so.
We love a lovable loser. And when you've seen a franchise never do this, and when I'm watching on social media and everybody's pointing out on social media the number of Lions fans that traveled to that game, and I know Goff mentioned best fans in the world, like Lions fans are coming out of the woodwork because they and I'm not even talking about them in some bandwagon sense. There are loyal Lions fans that have just been absolutely on year after year after year by their favorite team. And I think every fan out there in any sport that's had a lovable loser where you have this relationship where you just can't ever see him get over the hump. I think the Lions are about to have this Chicago Cubs shine suddenly come on, and where the Lions go on a run here, America is going to suddenly absolutely adore that franchise.
Yeah, they've been waiting so long. I had 2 different friends who were separately in Tampa this weekend. Both of them texted me the same thing. They're like, Lions fans are really feeling it. Like, they are feeling good right now. There are a lot of Lions fans at that game, and hats off to them. If you stuck with this team through all of the nonsense, you're really enjoying it now. Who's not rooting for the Lions, right? Like, if your team's like out of it by now, I get why Eagles fans wouldn't be rooting for the Lions or 49ers fans, but if you're just kind of looking for a team to jump on their bandwagon, Dan Campbell is so easy to relate to. He's one of those dudes. They got a lot of fun players. They got a fun offense. Yes, they are America's darling. There's no question. If they actually could make a Super Bowl, it'd be one of the great sports stories of our lifetimes. And that's not even hyperbole. It would be, I hate to say it because I hate the Cubs, but just like the Cubs in 2016, where just kind of everybody is so happy for a fan base that suffered for so long.
Yeah, until, I cannot imagine what it's like if we end up with Lions versus, I don't know, like Chiefs, and you feel like you've got two franchises that have lived a much different existence. Yeah, but I'm with you, and in it for every single second of it. A little less exciting, Washington beats Atlanta 24-16, but I was excited to talk about this game with you particularly because we've been consistently tough on Desmond Ridder. Ridder has a good game not long ago, and everybody suddenly turns around and says, oh my God, this is Desmond Ridder's tean. And then all of a sudden, he single-handedly throws them out of any contention to win this football game. It's just a reminder that I will not ever bank on this Atlanta Falcons team this season to be able to be consistent because I do not trust their quarterback.
I think you said it well. I mean, yeah, how can you? I mean, he's just so up and down. And you thought, maybe he turned a corner, and then he did throw him out of that game. Now, I will say the play calling before he threw the pick into the end zone was just miserable. Like, Arthur Smith had this, like, oh, God, but what are you doing down there? Like, you didn't give yourself a chance to win, really. It was pretty miserable. The thing about the Falcons, and I'll let everybody, right now, pause the podcast and go look at the Falcons schedule. You will be shocked at how soft it is. But can they take advantage of it if the quarterback is throwing them out of games? Like, this is legitimately a team that could win 10 games just because their schedule is so easy. They have so many winnable games. But if your quarterback's throwing you out of games, you're losing the games instead of Washington Commanders that you're going to look back in early January and say, why didn't we make the playoffs? Oh, yeah, because we lost to the freaking Commanders at home. Like in other games to come that they're going to blow because their quarterback play isn't good enough. You do wonder if Arthur Smith at some point goes to Taylor Heineke. Like at some point, he's going to get fed up with this too. Like he's just not going to let Desmond Ridder ruin a season where they could legitimately go to the playoffs.
By the way, for anyone that didn't pause the pod, I'll just tell you now because I pulled it up after Frank was brilliant.
You're a man of the people. You really are.
Tampa Bay, but then to your point,
beatable.
And then you have Tennessee, Minnesota, Arizona, New Orleans, New York, Tampa Bay, Carolina, the Colts, the Bears, the Saints. Like. Yeah, right. It's all right there. That's all. Wow.
I mean, their schedule's so soft. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it when I looked it up. I was like, this is a playoff team. But then you lose to the Commanders. Then maybe you're not a playoff team because you're one of the teams on the schedule. Everybody, Tampa's saying, oh, good, we get the Falcons this week. If your quarterback play continues to be like that, that's just who you are. You're just a kind of a mediocre team that's going to really regret. I tweeted this before. I'm going to say this every week on the podcast, okay? Them not chasing Lamar Jackson is malpractice. It will be forever. I will complain about this forever. I'm sorry, Falcons fans. You're going to hear me talk a lot about this. Them not even trying to sign Lamar Jackson when he was out there, franchise tagged, is just, what are you doing? Like, you really believed in Desmond Ridder? Okay, great. Ridder's your guy. Sweet. Go 8-9 this year. It's beautiful.
Especially given the state of their division overall.
Right.
Like, I think you got to have a business plan when, as a Raiders fan, when I look in the division, I'm like, okay, you're taking on Mahomes forever. You know that. Like, so you need a long-term answer at quarterback and you need to draft a certain way, so on and so forth. When you look at the opportunity, the open door in the South right now, how do you not make that like, hey, we can get in the playoffs, and if you get in the dance, got a chance. Like I agree with you completely, and you also made a point that I will continue to echo. I love telling people this at sports bars whenever I'm watching games, and they're like, oh, we've got insert team here coming up next. We've got the Vikings next. They're easy. Well, Vikings fans are saying the same thing about your team. We do need to remember that there's a lot of mediocre teams that are like, look at the. Speaking of the Vikings, by the way, they get a 19-13 win that was UGLY. You ain't got no alibi. It was ugly. I had to do that. They get it against the Bears, minus Justin Fields for a good portion of this second half. Justin Fields goes out with an injury. which is, at this point, for Chicago, catastrophic. The only thing you can hope for out of this season is that you continue to see more out of Justin Fields. You lose him in this game, you lose this game, and now the Bears are sort of waiting with bated breath to figure out what's next for their quarterback.
Yeah, I guess dislocated his thumb, tried to pop it back in and still play, which hats off, man. I ain't doing that. I get a headache and I'm in bed for the day. Like, no, I'm done. Like, good for you, Justin Fields. I appreciate that. But I do think there's some Bears fans who would argue that Justin Fields going to miss some time and we're going to lose a bunch of games. All right, that's not too bad. We got our one win. We're not going to go down with that Lions team, that Browns team that didn't win a game. You got to get the one. You don't want to be 0 like your Panthers. Got to get the one. They got the one. So now I think, like, is this their path? It's almost ironic that Justin Fields if he's out for a while, it almost opens up their path to Drake May or Caleb Williams, right? Like, I mean, it's almost costing him his job. So I don't want to see that, obviously. Crazy. I don't want to see that. I was really getting invested in Justin Fields. Is he turning the corner? These last 2 games were great. He was bad today before the injury. The injury obviously knocks him out. So we'll see what health-wise is going on. By the way, did you hear the whole Vikings Creed thing?
No.
So Kirk Cousins after the game, they're like, what? I don't even know how it came up, like how this thing come up, but he's like, yeah, we're bumping Creed in a locker room. And that's really made the difference today. And oh my God, I wish there was a hidden camera in there. I could see some of those guys being like, what on earth music is this playing right now? We're playing Higher by Creed to get ready to go play. Oh, great. This is
gotta
awesome.
Stop. This Creed thing has got to stop.
It's got to stop. The Rangers are doing it. Rangers won tonight. Game 1 of the ALCS.
Look, I get that Creed's got nothing going on, and maybe the right thing to do here is just invite Creed to your stadium because they have nothing going on. But no, like there is absolutely nobody should be listening. I would have less of a problem with somebody being like, yeah, man, we listened to the entire library of Nickelback. Like, at least I can understand that. Like, let's just be honest. Like, if we're making a spectrum of rock bands, like Creed down here and Nickelback is actually far higher on the, like, this is far better. The Creed thing has got to stop, man. It's got to stop.
I'm so glad I brought that up because that was epic. I love that. We can move on now because I just needed to get the temperature there for you and Creed.
The temperature is like 7th layer of hell hot every time I hear something about Creed. I'm also 7th layer of hell hot on the Bengals at this point. They get a big 17-13 win over the Seahawks. But really, like, we don't care about results right now. We care about how Joe Burrow looks. And so this continues whatever this miracle thing is of Burrow looked pretty good, right? Like, if I was watching him today, I wasn't sitting there thinking, oh, God, with the calf. Like, I don't know how he's managed to do it, but it seems like he is on the way to being back to where he was. Like, I won't say that he's, like, I feel as confident, but 17-13, huge win for them over Seattle.
Yeah, health-wise, he does look back. But this offense doesn't. Seattle outplayed him in this game. And I know people hate hearing that. Like, how could you say they outplayed him? They lost. Well, Seattle had 381 yards. The Bengals had 214. This offense is still stuck. They're not getting another game where they're not getting anything downfield. And Burrow looked healthy. That's almost alarming. Like, we can't just say, oh, Burrow's hobbling around in a pocket. He actually moved around pretty well, and they still did nothing. What saved him in this game was their pass rush was awesome. Sam Hubbard was just a beast in this game. He took over this game, really. I thought Geno played a pretty poor game. He put up some numbers. He put up some yards. But Geno's taking a step back this year. I think we could say that. I like where Seattle's at as a team, but Geno's kind of good, not great, not as great as he was last year. I think that's safe to say. I thought he threw a couple really bad picks, couldn't come up with the play when they needed it at the end. But I thought Seattle absolutely played well enough to win and somehow didn't. And it's almost like the Bengals win, and that's great. And they're back to 3-3 going into the bye. Burrow's going to get even healthier. But this was not an impressive game for the Bengals. It's impressive for them to win and stay. I mean, again, they would have taken 3-3. They started 1-3. That's pretty good rally. I didn't think the Bengals looked good in this game. They got lucky to win because Sam Hubbard took over the game. But it's still, Burrow looks great health-wise. He doesn't look like Joe Burrow yet.
I think everything you just said is spot on. The one thing I would add with Geno is that when most of the league is in this tightly compacted space of where their play level is, those couple of bad throws are such a huge difference. And last year it felt like every time he needed to make a big play, somehow he did. And it got them through. Like, it helped them win games. This year, that little bit of magic seems to be gone. And then you factor in the turnovers and just misses on third downs. And when most of the league is mediocre, which seems to be the theme of today's show, I say this every Sunday with you. Like, I think we forget sometimes that 4 plays, 5 plays is the difference between win and loss in a lot of these games. Last year, Geno made those. This year, it just doesn't feel like they're falling his way. And that's enough of a difference to cost Seattle a couple of games in this process. I still think Seattle has every possibility of being a playoff team. I just don't think Seattle is anywhere near the echelon they need to be if they want to be a really competitive playoff team in the NFC.
That's really fair. And I think it's funny how the NFL works. If they would have finished that last drive, scored, won, we would have been talking about, is Seattle the sneaky like Super Bowl contender? Because at that point it would have been 4-1, a win at Cincinnati, a win at Detroit that's aging great, by the way. But they didn't make those plays. Now they're 3-2, and I mean, it's. I still think there's a good team lurking there, but you're right. It comes down to those 4 or 5 plays. Is Geno going to make those plays like he did last year, or is he not? The jury's still out. We'll see where we go with Seattle from here.
All right, because we talk about every game. The Rams 26, Arizona 9. Did you have I watched this, and I mean, a couple of really nice catches by Cooper Kupp. There were a couple of moments where the offense had a little bit of explosiveness, but I found this to be in a world where I was bored with the Raiders win. I found this game to be equally as unstimulating.
Yeah, not a great game, and I think we're finding out that the Arizona Cardinals are probably as bad as we thought. Like, they had their run. They were really feisty for a few weeks, and now they're kind of taking a couple of bad losses. They look pretty bad today. The one thing I'll say, Kyren Williams out of nowhere. Look, he's winning some fantasy leagues. Let's put it that way, because this dude took over this game. He hadn't done anything in the first half. The Rams were just struggling along. It looked like they might take a loss. And then Kyren Williams ends up going for $158 and a touchdown. I mean, there's a reason they got rid of Cam Akers. This is it. Kyren Williams looks really, really good. I mean, he's just an absolute workhorse for them. I thought, and it's just, Cooper Kupp is so great. There was my buddy brought up this question, and I say no, but is Cooper Kupp a Hall of Famer? He's one of the best receivers I've seen in the last 25 years, but I don't think so, because he hasn't had the longevity with multiple great seasons. But is he? I mean, one of the best I've ever seen.
It feels like he should be. Like, you're right that we don't have it stacked season after season after season. But I do also sit there like the oversimplification of Hall of Famer. Like, when you see him on the schedule, do you say, oh my God, we have to take on that guy? And I think any team that's been looking, any fan that's been looking, any team that's been looking, he's a game wrecker and has been for, several years at this point. Now, yeah, I think he's a fringe. We'll say he's a fringe Hall of Famer. Yeah. I'll give him fringe.
I mean, he's one of those dudes who, getting off the bus, like, Cooper Kupp's getting the ball in every single key spot, and it doesn't matter. I mean, he went 7-148 today in a touchdown. You can't stop that guy. When like, okay, if we shut down Cooper Kupp, we're going to shut down the Rams. You still can't do it. Like, that's an elite player. He's just really fun to watch. I'm glad he's back healthy, because he's just a treat.
We also got a treat from Houston. They get a big win over New Orleans, 20-13. Derek Carr had the ball with a couple minutes left. I'm used to seeing that turn into a comeback for him, but wasn't able to get it done. CJ Stroud finally intercepted, so we can stop talking about that. But there is some level of Houston comes out and continues to get impressive wins. In my mind, beating the Saints is so far ahead of schedule for where the Texans were supposed to be right now that I can do nothing but stand back and say, holy cow, y'all were right.
With the number 2 pick, the Houston Texans absolutely changed the trajectory of their franchise. I think that, look, it's early, and I hate overreacting. I really try not to. But how can you say anything else but CJ Stroud is a future superstar? Like, he looks awesome. Like, he looks like a dude. Like, if you're just like throw on a football game and you're watching CJ Stroud play, you're like, yeah, this kid's probably played 9 years in the NFL. He is so under control. He makes so many nice plays. You just see and that clip of him talking about the Dalton Schultz touchdown against Atlanta, where, if people haven't seen it, it was on Twitter, where he went to Dalton Schultz, who's a veteran in this league, and basically said, adjust your route this way. They're going to bite. I'm going to hit you for a big play, and hits him. It happens. Hits him for a go-ahead touchdown at the time. You're like, this is a kid playing his 5th game. Like, that's unbelievable. And something's really going on with the Texans here. I mean, I don't know. Look, they could end up 3-14. And as long as CJ Stroud continues to play like he has, it's a successful season for them. They absolutely go to sleep tonight saying, we got our guy. We got our guy for the next 10 years. He's awesome. I'm just over the moon for CJ Stroud. I did not expect him to be this good, this quick. He's clearly, again, I think a superstar in the making. When you're this good as a rookie, you're not just a guy. You're going to be really good for a while. This is up there with Burrow and Herbert and Cam Newton for like the best rookie seasons we've ever seen. Dak Prescott's up there too. I just think Stroud is awesome. On the other side, this is a really disappointing loss for the Saints. You kind of felt like you just beat somebody 34-0. I don't care if the Patriots are terrible. Maybe you're a good team. Maybe you're not a good team. I mean, it just seems like the whole NFC South is just going to be pitiful again.
Yeah, well, and from C.J. Stroud, we always have to tie C.J. Stroud back to Bryce Young. And, I don't know what we really expected in this one. Miami beats Carolina 42-21. The only thing I'd say here is this was exactly the game I think we thought we were going to get, right? Like, Miami scored a bunch of points in spurts, and once they did that, this whole thing was this was over. And this is what Miami can do to you. Like, Miami can put up points on absolutely anybody, and when they do that, the hardest thing to do is figure out how to either manage patience, manage game control. Like in a world where so many times today we saw teams controlling snap count, basically, which I think is such a huge part of the way a game plays out. That's just virtually impossible to do against the Dolphins because they score so many points. You're suddenly tempted to run more plays. The more plays you run, the more times they get the ball, the more possessions they get, the more points they run. Like this is it's the never-ending cycle of playing the Dolphins.
It's amazing. I mean, yeah, the Panthers are up 14-0. And you're like, ooh, upset alert here, survivor pools, blah, blah, blah. And then you know how hard it is to lead a game by 14 points and not cover a 14-point spread as an underdog? Like, that just speaks to how quick the Dolphins can just get up on you. Like you said, like you want to keep them off the field because they can score so fast. Tyreek was awesome in this game. Raheem Mostert was awesome in this game. Like they lose Devin Achane, and it's like it doesn't matter. Raheem Mostert is perfectly capable in this offense. It's one of those. What do you take away from the Dolphins? Because it's just impossible. Like if you try, go ahead, take away Tyreek Hill. We still got Jalen Waddle. We still got this running game. They're really impressive. And on the Panther side, I don't think Bryce Young played bad. I thought he played pretty well in this game.
No, he played well.
But this just shows the Panthers are a terrible football team. Like, they're really, really bad. Like, I mean, their quarterback played as well as you could expect. They had a 14-point lead, and they still lost by 21. Like, at some point, like, now that we can't talk about 17-0 anymore, at some point we are going to have to be like, is it 0-17 possible here? And they don't even have their first-round pick. Like, it's a bad season for Carolina. And Reich kind of came out and said some things about David Tepper, made it sound like he's kind of taking them to task every week. Like, what's going on in my football team? It ain't going to get better. It's not going to get better as the season goes on. This is the worst team in football right now.
And it's the opposite feeling that the Texans have because it feels like the Texans have hope with their roster, with their quarterback, with their coach. And now Panthers fans are just looking around saying, I don't know. Now, one more game from Sunday, obviously, we got to get into that I think was big for two reasons. One obvious reason, Jacksonville, they thump Indianapolis 37-20. It sort of ends a little bit of the Minshew conversation. Didn't play particularly well in this one. But I think this is the important thing to me that hasn't been talked enough about. Like, these two teams are now done for the year. They have faced each other twice. It's over. Yeah. Jacksonville has the tiebreaker on it. Not that Indy is in the minds of many going to be competing for the division title, but if you're Jacksonville right now, you're watching the Titans implode. You now have the sweep over the Colts. Like, you're looking at it and saying, hey, all I'm doing is clear and brush in front of me to go out and win this division.
Yeah, and I think they'll get there. I don't think this is sustainable for the Texans. I don't think they're going to be a team that wins the division. Maybe we'll see. I mean, they're only a game back right now, but you're right that they having a season sweep already is huge. I just thought this game plan from the Colts was terrible. Minshew threw the ball 55 times in this game. They only had 15 carries by running backs, and I get a lot of that was game script in the second half. But in the first half, it was 25 dropbacks for Gardner Minshew, 9 carries by Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor. When you have Zach Moss on a heater and Jonathan Taylor finally getting back to where, you think he's going to be where he should be, you can't, that's just, it's irresponsible. Like we were reminded today, Gardner Minshew is probably the best backup in the NFL. And there's a reason he's a backup. You don't want to expose him too much. You don't want him throwing 55 times in a game. That's a recipe for absolute disaster. I thought this was just awful, terrible game plan from the Colts. From the jump, they just doomed themselves from the jump with this game plan of just going and have a Gardner Minshew drop back every pass. So I still don't. That's a funny thing. You talk about the Jaguars, and I agree with you that the path is right there. They're probably going to win this division. But after 6 games, I'm still waiting for the Jaguars to look great. Like they weren't great in this game. They're fine. Like Okay, that's cool. Great. Like I get they had a really, really quality win over the Bills last week, but I don't know. Maybe my bar is way too high for the Jaguars, but I come away from a Jaguars game saying, nah, okay, you won. Good. That's cool. Like I really haven't been that impressed with them yet.
But we'll get some ideas soon because your exercise of looking at upcoming games is important here. They have the Saints, then the Steelers, and then they get the 49ers. That's a big prove-it game. Titans is easy. Then they have the Texans who are playing well. Then the Bengals and Browns and Ravens in a row. Like Bengals, Browns, Ravens in a row is going to be a true prove-it moment for where this team stacks up. Like, I think we have to understand, and I'm not trying to be inconsistent with the way that we talk about or analyze teams, but the expectation for every team is not the same. So the expectation for the Jags was coming into the season to not only win the division, but to take that next step in the AFC. Like right now, when they get into that gauntlet where they have Bengals, Browns, Ravens, Buccaneers in a row at this point, like those are games that are going to particularly show where they stand with the rest of the conference. Like winning 8 or 9 games was not the objective for the Jags. The objective for the Jags was double-digit wins, win the division, put yourself in a situation where you have closed the gap between where the Chiefs and the Bills are, and you are in that same conversation. I can't say right now, even though they beat the Bills, obviously, I can't say that they're in that conversation right now. I think they've still got to prove a lot in the world of getting themselves back to where they were last year.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I guess that's the way that you put it very well. We haven't seen that step. It's kind of the same Jaguars from last year who finished the season pretty well, but they were up and down. And yeah, okay. I mean, that's great. Like we'll see though. Long season, at least are 4-2 as they figure this stuff out.
Yeah, and by the way, I still believe in, like, we've been really complimentary to Shane Steichen and the game plan most weeks. I think you're right. This week was a failed, just absolutely. Everybody in the building is going to look at it.
This had to be those two running backs getting 45 carries off the bus. Like, this is the way we're going to beat you. We're a physical team. We're going to pound you with these two. Really, like, Zach Moss at this point is one of the NFL's hottest running backs. Like, we have two of the best running backs in the NFL. We're going to run it down your throat. Instead, they're like, nah. Gardner Minshew's dropping back 25 times in the first half, and this game's still competitive. Like, no.
So that's all the Sunday action. Monday night, we get a doozy, all right? We get the Cowboys taking on the Chargers. Look, this game, I hate to say prove it game for both sides, but it feels like it. It feels like you got two teams that are sort of trying to prove whether or not they belong in a higher conversation or whether they're just sort of one of the, we'll see teams. Like, it feels like this is one of those staple games.
Totally agree. If the Cowboys follow up what they did last week against the 49ers with a loss to the Chargers, like, oh, all of a sudden we're knocking them down a tier. Like, it's just the way it is. Sorry. Like, I know the Chargers aren't a bad team or anything, but if you're going to be one of the 6-7 best teams in the NFL, this kind of game you win. And I was thinking about this. I'm going over the top with this, but is there any game in NFL history in which the road team had a bigger home field advantage than this game on Monday night? That place is going to be like 97% Cowboys fans. Like, it's going to be insane how this is going to be Jerry World West. Like, this is just the Chargers are going to have to go like silent snap count. Like, it's going to be absolutely crazy how many Cowboys fans there are versus Chargers fans. I think that's part of this. Part of my kind of outlook on this game is there's no home field advantage for Chargers in this game. I'm sorry. I almost look at this as at best a neutral field, maybe even a quasi home game for the Cowboys, like the Jaguars in London or something. The Cowboys have to win this game. If I'm going to take them seriously as maybe you can surpass the Eagles. Maybe you can make a playoff run. You can't lose this game on Monday night. You just can't. Like, otherwise you're just another team. You're just another team if you lose that game.
But I'll say the same thing about the Chargers, and that's what's confusing about this. Like, the Chargers have a 2-point loss to the Dolphins, a 3-point loss to the Titans, a narrow 4-point win over the Vikings, and then a 7-point win over the Raiders that came down to the end. So all 4 of their games, like, I mean, you could make a Chargers fan's going to say, hey, we're a few plays away from being 4-0. A Chargers hater is going to say, you're a few plays away from being 0-4. And like, and it's not like you faced a gauntlet. I mean, the Dolphins obviously very good, but the Titans, Vikings, Raiders are all in the somewhere stuck in between the barrel of suck and the middle of mediocrity, right? Like, so if you're the Chargers, you got the Cowboys and then the Chiefs. Like, these are the 2 weeks that everybody's going to step back and say, okay, you're for real or you're not for real. And at some point, you didn't pay Justin Herbert to be a middle of the pack team. Like, this is supposed to be a team that can annually, with the talent they have, be amongst the elite teams in the AFC. If they can't get it done against the Cowboys, I'll have as many questions about the Chargers as I have about anybody at this point in the season.
Absolutely. I think you put that really well. It's a fun game. It's just because of what's kind of at stake for both teams. It's a fork of the road game for both teams. Are you good or not? Show me. Like, let's see what you got. You're going against a really good opponent on Monday night. If you want to be taken seriously, go out and win that game.
Doesn't Austin Eckler have to go off to, like, to me, 99% sure he's going to play. The Cowboys have been susceptible to the run. It just feels like this is like Eckler has to come in and go. If Eckler doesn't go off, now all of a sudden you realize the Chargers have a running issue in general. Has nothing to do with the back. They have a running issue if he can't go off.
And on the flip side, if he does go off, we know then the Cowboys have an issue against the run. Every team is just going to be like, just throw the pass plays out of the game plan this week because we're just going to run it down the Cowboys' throat. So I think that's a big part of this game too, of seeing, hey, Cowboys, could you stand up to somebody, punch him in the mouth? It's great when you're front running and you're up 30-0 on the Giants and Micah Parsons is in Daniel Jones' lap every play. If somebody, the Arizona Cardinals punch him in the mouth, ran for 222. Is that the same thing going to happen tomorrow night? We'll see.
You got to believe, too, the Eagles' loss puts a little bit of extra juice. I know it's early in the year, but when you see the opportunity to gain ground in your own division, it just has. They sat there and watched all that action today. They saw when it went down. So, I feel like that's got to. You're going to have a very charged version of the Cowboys. I think they come out in this game. They show that they're a much better team than they're getting credit for being right now. I think if they don't, man, Tuesday, the sky will be falling on every show. Like, that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, I'm going to have to fire Mike McCarthy on Twitter if they lose tomorrow night. So, yeah.
Or just doom scroll it for the fun. Like, it's just, either way, it's a win for everybody. Charles McDonald back on Tuesday with the exempt list. Of course, you don't want to miss that. I'm back on Wednesday with Charles Robinson, Jory Epstein for Inside Coverage. You can leave us a voicemail. This is awesome. Like, check, we got voicemail technology. Speakpipe.com. That's speakpipe, one word, .com/0blitz. Again, speakpipe.com/0blitz. Leave us a voicemail. We'll play. If it's a good voicemail, you'll make the show. If you make the show, we'll send you something. I'm making that up. I have no power to do that, but yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to send stuff. Also, you can follow us on the social medias. It's at Jason Fitz, at Yahoo Schwab, at SJ Rochelle to get to Stone. He's our producer behind the glass, and I'm just going to tell you, since he's the one that listens to the voicemails first, you should probably follow Stone and then slide into those DMs. Leave us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think of the show. Obviously, rate it, review it, subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your enemies, tell everybody to hang out with us every single week. We love doing it. Make sure you check out the Yahoo Sports app. Also got some great stuff out there for you all the time. For Frank, I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. See you next week, guys.